Welcome back. So, video number 10. And today's topic is surviving Tony Robbins event, which is not going to be just about that, but it's more about understanding how can you fully immerse yourself in 4 to sometimes 10-day long seminar, uh, take away as much as you can in 16, 12, 20-hour days, and still be able to somewhat survive at the end of it. So what actually happens in those events? How can you improve your ability to absorb information? How can you actually maintain some of your health as well? Because it's extremely taxing on your physiology as well. And everything else that comes in between us. We'll just see and unwrap all this and kind of try to justify why things are done in a way that they are set out. So I'll probably start with the fact that Tony Robbins events are ridiculously cold.
So let me ask you a little bit about that. So every event that you've gone to, the actual hall, where they're going to hold the public meeting and every event, what's the temperature there?
At my guess, it would be no higher than 12 degrees Celsius. It's cold, like literally in the one I just went recently in West Palm Beach, outside temperature around 30 degrees Celsius. Inside, people were wearing winter coats, fleeces, like gloves, hats, all sorts, and people are freezing.
Yeah. So you're telling me, okay, that people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for this. They go to this event and nobody's going to give a fuck, sorry for the language, about what they feel temperature wise. The temperature will be cold. That is very interesting to me because now I've never been to a Tony Robbins event, but this particular hack is something that I'm very familiar with. It's called cold thermogenesis. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about how this performing physically or mentally in a cold environment dramatically improves what's going to happen. We'll talk about it through biological means, but and I should give you an idea of like they're doing this on purpose, right? Obviously, I mean, in Miami, it would have been way cheaper, way more efficient to just turn the temperature from 35 degrees or 32 degrees to 28, make it comfortable, right? But instead, they turned it all the way down to like 12 degrees. That is for a very specific reason called cold thermogenesis. How did you feel? Not necessarily like the temperature, right? Obviously, it was cold and you were cold, but how did you feel mentally and physically going in and out of that room?
So for me, people need to take into account that I come from Baltic states. So it was comfortable for me. Going outside, I just, as soon as that heat wave hit, I'm like, I'm tired, I'm drained. I just don't want to be there. Like, and the thing is as well, last event I went to was 4 days. And by day 3, when my glycogen reserves are completely depleted, I was starting to get cold as well. First 2 days, I was just loving it. Whereas everyone else was, I could see they were uncomfortable. Absolutely. For me, going inside venue was refreshing. I felt great.
Awesome. So here, I'm going to explain a little bit on why outside temperature or just outside your body. So this is the same type of phenomenon that people talk about with cold showers, or I'm sure you've all heard of like the Iceman, the guy who goes and dunks himself in ice water and he's naked and whatnot. It's the same effect.
He's oftentimes in Tony Robbins events.
Yeah, exactly, right. So why do you think that they're taking advantage of that? And I'm going to explain some things about that. We've talked about in previous episodes about your mitochondria and how it senses light and magnetism and also it's the thing that powers your whole body, and that's why we're trying to do all of these. Keep your body, keep the basics in order. Hey, get up in the morning at this time, get some outside time, get your aerobic activity up, all that stuff. We're doing that with a very specific purpose of making your mitochondria as efficient as possible at making you human, right? Because that is literally the thing that powers all of our energy. Okay. The other fun fact about mitochondria is it also is the thing that keeps us warm. Okay, it's the thing that produces heat energy. So infrared light, that's heat. It actually lets off light when it's making electron transport chain. So the electrons are tunneling and making the ATP at the end, right? This is real sciencey, but everybody kind of knows or has heard, from science class when they were younger, hey, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? A lot of people have heard that. Um, a thing about that is that's an engine. Okay, that is an engine. How do you make an engine top performance? By making sure that it has plenty of coolant, right? Because the cooler the engine can run, the less wear and tear, and the more efficiency it goes up. This is very, very well displayed in jet engines. Okay, a jet engine does not work very good when it's low to the ground. It works the best when it's at altitude because it's freaking below zero there. Okay. So now the engine can run to full efficiency. That's your mitochondria. Now I'm going to explain a little bit of what happens inside. Everybody knows that when you freeze a bottle of water, it expands, right? Like that's not, abnormal. Everybody's seen that. Well, the opposite is true. When you warm a bottle of water, it shrinks. Okay. So if mitochondria make heat, okay, and mitochondria are inside your cell, and mitochondria have cytosol, there's cytosol outside the cell, and there's liquid, there's fluid around that whole system, right, inside your cell. When the mitochondria make heat, it shrinks. So now your electron transport chain is closer together. That means you are more efficient at making ATP and tunneling electrons by default. That's simple physics, right? So if you expose your body to cold, your body's response, your mitochondrial response is, let's make more heat. Making more heat starts inside the cells. It shrinks the cell. You are by default more efficient now. And where do you think you have the most mitochondria in your whole body? Right here and right here. So if you expose yourself to cold, you are by default increasing the efficiency of all of your mitochondria. It just happens that we have most of it in our brain and in our heart. So you are by default becoming superhuman for those hours that you're in there when it comes to being able to produce ATP and tunnel electrons, which by default, if you have more energy in your brain and in your heart, you're going to think sharper. You're not going to have brain fog. Your heart is going to be pumping more efficiently. So yes, the events are taxing, but they become even more survivable and you get way more out of them because the room temperature is cold, right?
So is this obviously straight away, it's probably applicable to every single setting where you put yourself under some kind of stress where you need to be responding really quick, whether it's been physical, job, or mental, or whatever. Would you say as well that after this kind of event where you want to refresh everything, it would be good to mimic the environment you were in to get your notes in order and make sure that you have revised and engraved everything in the brain in much more efficient way than if you were just to jump on a plane or whatever,
Yes,
wrap yourself
yes,
in a really
absolutely.
warm blanket.
Yeah, and in fact, you can take that lots of steps, lots of different ways to take advantage of this phenomenon. So in this example of the actual event, you're cold while you're absorbing this information, while you're at the event, right? This is more along the lines of performance, right? Mental performance is sharp. You're able to think clearly. You're able to absorb information. So what happens after the event? That was a stressor. Okay, that was a stressor, and it was slightly circumvented because of the cold environment. Now, if you want to augment how you process the information in that event, or even amplify your recall abilities, the cold itself isn't, this is where people get confused, the cold itself isn't the thing that's actually improving cognitive abilities. Remember what I said before, it's the heat from your mitochondria and it's responding to the cold. So you could take this even a step further. You could go, hey, I'm going to get in an ice bath or get my body temperature really cold for about 10 to 15 minutes, okay? Very short period of time. That's enough response for your mitochondria. That's enough time for your mitochondria to upregulate its heat production. And now you get out of that environment. Now you sit down comfortably and you start going through all your notes for the next couple hours, because that phenomenon of producing more heat is going to continue on even after you've removed yourself from that cold. But you're now in a more comfortable spot. You're not thinking about how cold you are, and you can start revising your notes. You can start, sending out emails, whatever you got to do to kind of solidify your learning process, right? Um, but you're going to be doing it in a more efficient state for the next, well, probably 90 minutes to 2 hours after you remove yourself from that really cold 10-minute ice bath, right? That is invaluable. You can do this, in multiple settings where maybe it's not necessarily recalling information, but it's like, hey, I got a deadline. Remember last episode we talked about, if you have a lot of really mental tasks that you got to go through, it would be better to not try to cram into the night and actually get early sleep and wake up early. Well, you can improve that whole hack by you wake up early at 4 a.m. or whatever to do all this mentally taxing work. Get in a cold shower, cool your body down even further, hop out, bundle up, start work. For the next 2 hours, you're going to not only be more efficient because you got good sleep earlier in the day, earlier in the night, and you woke up early to get this done and you're more refreshed, but now you've also amplified your mitochondria's ability to produce energy without even having to eat any food, right? That's incredibly valuable, because now you can really accelerate how efficient you're going to be for the next 2 or 3 hours that morning. I do this stuff all the time, especially right now where it's winter. In fact, that's exactly what I did before I hopped on here. I took my coffee. I got naked, literally naked. I mean, it's freaking 5 a.m. here. Nobody's watching. And I just went outside and laid in the snow. I just, sat down in the snow and made my body as cold as possible for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then I put my shirt on and walked back in here, and I'm totally fine. Though that is a simple hack that you can do to improve your cognitive ability right then and there.
So bringing up from there are a few other things that are happening in the event. First of them is you start your day as physically active as you can. So by that I mean loud music, a lot of jumping around, a lot of dancing around, all those kind of things before you sit down and start learning. So what's happening there?
Yeah, so that goes to show, it actually happens naturally. There's a phenomenon that happens naturally with sunlight exposure in the morning. Dopamine starts to rise, and oxytocin. Remember, we talked about, sex and rock and roll last time. So that's actually a phenomenon that they're wanting to induce higher levels of dopamine, higher levels of oxytocin, for that, because those prepare you to learn. Okay, so one of the most natural things that you can do to really bump up dopamine and oxytocin is go somewhere new, just literally. Okay, so the fact that you're already somewhere new, that's already higher. Then they amplify that even more by really loud, really crazy lighting shows, I'm sure, right? All the lights are going all crazy and stuff like that. And again, I've never been to one, but I'm just assuming this is the things that they're doing, right?
Oh, it's
And this,
full blown rave.
yeah, 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 exactly, yeah, and that is on purpose to start getting your body almost like confused, like, hey, where the fuck am I? What the hell's going on? And not your body, but like your brain, and then your brain starts releasing these chemicals that are going to prepare you for a learning process of where am I? What's going on? All the vigilant type of things that need to happen, right? The moment those get released, you are now more prepared to soak in all information, right? Now, what you do with that information, that's up to you, whether, you can solidify the learning process or not. Are there things you can do to do that? Absolutely. You already do some of those. You take a little extra choline, a little bit of extra carnitine, and, you could even add some selenk to that and amplify that learning process even further.
So a few other things is that these things are happening literally throughout the day. So every couple hours or every hour or so, you will be sitting there for an hour or so, making notes extensively, working on some tasks and whatnot. And then out of nowhere, there will be lights on, lights off, music blasting again. And this happens throughout the day. Really, sometimes up to 16, 18 hours a day. Like last time I went, it was from like 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just like ridiculous. So how do you prepare for such a long day, knowing exactly what's going to happen? And how do you prepare for something like that if you don't know what the hell is happening? So you've just heard about these things.
Yeah. So number one, some of the things that you already do, which is, hey, before the event, I don't necessarily train ridiculously hard. I don't try to deplete my glycogen stores. I actually try to fuel up on them. And then during the event, during the days, what is going to, because remember, you're cold this whole time too, plus all this stuff is going on, right? So how do you make sure that your mitochondria are going to be able to make as much heat as possible to continue to improve cognitive performance? A lot of good, healthy fats and proteins. Again, you already do some of this. It is, okay, I don't need glycogen because I'm just going to get a little sciencey a little bit. Carbohydrates go into the mitochondria at electron, or actually at the, I'm spacing it. The electron transport chain has 5 sections of it, and the last one is the ATPase. Okay, and it's I want to say cytochrome 1, 2, 3, yeah, something like that. Is goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then ATPase. Carbohydrates come at number 1. Okay. And by default, they come in here and they produce less hydrogen at that, which means less water is going to be produced. Fats come in at number 2. They will make more water. And the simple way to really think about it, you don't really have to know all that science, is this. Everybody knows that carbohydrates have 4 calories, okay? Everybody knows that fats have 9 calories. What does that mean? It means that the byproducts are also going to be bigger, and the byproducts of our energy are, we already know this, is CO2, we breathe that out, and water. Okay, that water is this intracellular water. So if you're eating more fats, more proteins, you are going to by default accelerate how much water gets put into the cell, which means that the cell will be able to shrink more as you get more heat into there, which means that you're going to be able to produce more ATP. So preparing for it is eating a lot of carbohydrates and things like that, especially if you're a big person. If you're a small person, this matters less, but if you're a big person, it matters more. Getting a lot of glycogen stores in there. Then, while these days are going on, don't focus on trying to replenish those glycogen stores because you're getting cold, right? That is crucial to why you don't really need those carbohydrates. The carbohydrates are just there, almost like a spare tank. The thing that's actually fueling that whole thing and fueling the mental processes are the fats in that scenario, the fats and the protein. So the more protein you have, the more the ATPase has to turn, because the ATP is used for something called protein folding. And the fats are what's going to provide the calories, the energy, plus the default substrate that's used after, which is the water. So that's how you would survive, is the more fat, the more steak, the more roasts, the more of that you can eat. And big time, if you have access to it, is fatty fish, okay? Because that's also going to improve DHA and cognitive ability. The places where you have the most DHA, your eyes, your brain, and your heart. Again, it's the places where you have the most mitochondria as well. DHA does not get used for it's a fat, it's omega-3 fat. It doesn't get used for energy. Your body never uses it for energy. It uses it to make better cell structures. It forms part of the cell, right? And it's also conductive. So that means all your your neurons that are firing with all this new information, they are going to be better conductive. So that means you're going to be able to think more clearly if you have higher DHA stores. So this goes back to another test that's not that's a blood test that's not really done that much. I wish more people did it, but it's also a great indicator of your cognitive performance, and that is your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio.
So throughout the day, a lot of encouragement to stay hydrated. We obviously understand the importance of that. So, but dig deeper into that. What is happening? What's going to happen with your cognitive performance if you don't stay hydrated? And more important is what is happening if you wake up and don't sort your hydration there and then and walk into studio already dehydrated. So
Yeah, so I honestly would say dehydration, let's, take a step back from performance for a moment. Um, Dehydration is the first step in disease. Any disease is it starts with cellular dehydration. You want to become diabetic? Drink less water. Like that's step one. Okay, you want to induce some kind of a mental fog scenario, be dehydrated. So why is that? Because water is also conductive, right? It is conductive, and that means by default cells won't, if they're dehydrated, they won't be able to communicate as well if that tissue is dehydrated. Just from a simple communication standpoint, it won't be able to communicate very well. And that's important because of this, okay? When you eat something, your body's anticipatory for everything that's going to happen, right? So if it was sweet, there are signals that get sent to your brain that, hey, this was sweet. It's probably going to be a carbohydrate. So it starts sending signals to your pancreas and to your liver that, hey, we're probably going to be anticipating some insulin release. We're probably, you see what I mean? There's a whole communication process. That's why your body's so damn fantastic at doing the shit that it does, is because it's never reactive. It's always anticipating. But anticipation means that you have to have good communication, right? Like if you're anticipating me coming over to visit you and I don't tell you that I'm coming over, are you going to be very prepared for me coming over? Fuck no, you're actually going to be like, oh fuck, I wasn't ready for that, right?
I'm in the gym, come tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Like communication is the first step in being anticipatory, and your body is very anticipatory. So good communication is priority number one, and water is a crucial part of good communication. So this is just from purely physics and biology of this is step one in having great communication. If you get that right, you're already better off than most people. The problem is most people don't drink remotely enough water at the beginning of the day to be ready for the rest of the day. And go ahead, go ahead.
So is there something that can amplify the effect of hydration? Is there something that we can add? You know, a lot of people will add lemon and a lot of people will do electrolytes. What
Mhm.
would be that one thing that can probably improve the hydration levels?
Just simple salt, sea salt preferred, for this specific thing. You can add it to your water, or you can just add it to your meals, right? But you put plenty of salt. It is called an electrolyte for a reason because it's conductive. It conducts electricity. It helps the absorption of bringing water into the cell through the sodium potassium pump issue. Like it makes the working thing work as far as how water gets from outside to inside, because water doesn't, like, too many people are confused about, hey, if I drink water, just water, it's going to go in my cells. That's not really how it works. Like it just doesn't flow into the cell. There's a very specific process where the cell has to open up a little bit, the water goes in and then it closes back down, then the water gets redistributed correctly, because your body tries to maintain a very specific pH and, like, how would I say, like, composition of the water inside itself. It doesn't just let water go in, right? So making it more plasma-like to begin with is already a step ahead to be able to accelerate that process of going in.
Yeah, so that's probably why when a lot of people when just starting drinking water, they just run to toilet every 2 seconds, but they don't
Yeah,
take that in
yeah,
account that
and so
their
this
body
this
is
goes
so
back. Yeah.
used to one place,
Hmm.
and hey, you need your body to kind of get in used to the volumes of water you're putting in now to balance everything out. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
and we'll go through that process real quick. So if you just start drinking more water, like say you normally drink only like 80 ounces of water, which is like less than 3 liters, right? It's
Well,
like,
I have seen some guys who drink like 8 a day, and you're like, what?
yeah, 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 and I drink around 5, so that's still a pretty good amount. But anyway, most, you'll see some people that are only drinking like two liters a day, right, which is not enough. And then you give them, hey, you need to drink at least 4. So they start drinking 4, and they just urinate and urinate and urinate and urinate, and then they're like, they give up after like day 2 or 3. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're starting over now. Now you're more dehydrated. You got to keep it going, because it takes your body about 2 weeks for that first phase to go away. That doesn't mean that after 2 weeks you're going to be utilizing it. That's phase one of your body not getting rid of it, right? So phase one takes about 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. And after that, it's another 10 to 14 days before your body, because remember I said the water doesn't just come in and get absorbed. It has to come in, and then there's this process of letting it in, okay? So the first part is your body just getting rid of it because it doesn't know what to do with that outside water. It just gets rid of it. That takes about 10 to 14 days. Then it's another 10 to 14 days before your body starts to establish a good rhythm of, oh, there's all this extra water. We're not getting rid of it. Now let's start upregulating the processes of letting it in. Okay. So then it's another 10 to 14 days. So now you're talking 20 days. Okay. 20 days of upregulated water intake before you're actually utilizing more water in the cell. Okay. So this goes back to, how do you prepare for a Tony Robbins event? Start drinking more water 20 days before you show up. Okay. At a minimum. Okay. That's a long preparatory stage, but the simple thing is you should already be doing this, right? We've talked about this in other episodes. Hey, you need to be drinking more water. You need to start with about this much. That's the reason why, is because if you're already doing this, then you don't have to worry about preparing. You're already prepared, right? But if you're not already doing this, don't think that you're going to be able to show up and start drinking more water and be okay. That's not how it works. You'll actually probably feel a little worse.
Yeah, and the other thing, so video is not just surviving Tony Robbins event, it's surviving something extremely strenuous no matter what life throws at you.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And so that's why some of these processes, the Tony Robbins events just highlights, hey, when you're doing shit right, you can amplify them more, right? But if you're not doing them right and you try to amplify them, it's gonna go worse, right? That's exactly what I just explained. If you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this cold thing, but I need a lot of water. I want to do that cold thing next week. Well, that's not enough time to get the benefit because you haven't preloaded the water situation. That's just one aspect of this whole thing. So again, if you guys are confused, go back to all the other episodes, start picking up on all these basics, right? And then you get to here and you start learning the fancy shit that you can do. Sorry for the words, but the fancy stuff that you can do to amplify things even more. And this is even without taking pharmacology into play. Now you can start playing with some of those types of things if you want to amplify them even more. But once you step into there's a cost for everything. Even these, raising the cold and stuff like that. You're going to have to pay the price after, which is, look at episode right before this one, and then the forced recovery episode. Sometimes if you dig for long enough, you will be forced to recover. And sometimes if it's just amplifying things just to the next level, right? You're just taking it to the next level. Well, if you're good about all the habits that we talked about in the previous episode number 9, well, you can probably run this for a lot longer, 6-7 months, right? And continue to use some of these natural strategies to really amplify cognitive performance and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've had some comments on me. Hey, how do you maintain your energy so high? Because usually big guys like you, they're just lethargic and always tired, this and that. So I do all the things like you said, like carb loading. I have 2-3 days, hell of a lot of carbs before I even go there. And then when I'm there, people go like, well, why don't you eat every 2 hours? I eat when I will need to, when I have time. Mm-hmm. But my meals I will have steak every day.
Yeah.
And things like that. So following up on that, I wanted to touch up in dig deeper into choline, carnitine, and especially selang. How can they help? How can they improve your ability to absorb information, survival, those kind of things? And is there anything else that can be done, used, simple as multivitamins, things like that?
Yeah. So as far as the choline, carnitine, so I won't touch on.
Where can you get them naturally to begin with? And is there a need to supplement with them in the ways that I do, for example?
Yes. Okay. So naturally, you're going to get L-carnitine and choline from meat sources, specifically things like steak.
What if someone is plant-based?
You're going to be in trouble. Now you're talking supplementation, right? Now you're talking, you're going to need some For choline, it's simple, like the actual oral choline bitrate will be suffice for that. But L-carnitine, you're not going to be able to get it orally. You're going to have to go with an injectable format, especially if you're a plant-based person, because you need to bring that up significantly. And in order to do that orally, you're going to crap your pants before you can get enough in your stomach, right?
Yeah,
And so
and just explains that it's not a metaphor. It's literally a side effect of.
yeah. You will literally, if you try to get 5 grams of carnitine in your body every day, by the third day you're going to start going to the bathroom and have diarrhea and all that type of stuff. You're not. It's not a good outcome. So don't try to do that. A little bit isn't going to do anything, right? If you take 2 or 3 pills of whatever they sell you at the supplement store, it's not doing anything. Not nearly enough. So you would need to go with an injectable format. And then on that note, okay, so that's where you get them, and you get them from foods naturally. You can supplement the choline stuff orally. That's probably going to be okay if you're plant based. But now, let's say you're not plant based and you eat plenty of red meat and all that type of stuff. How do you amplify these things? Okay, and that's going to be through the injectable format. You can get injectable choline and injectable carnitine. There are places out there called DurellStrength.com where you can buy this product, both of them already together, so it's one injection. And what it does is this: choline will act as a raw substrate for acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Go back to what we just talked about earlier. It's about communication. It's about sending information through your nervous system. Acetylcholine is a key driver in sending information across your nervous system. So you're going to amplify that directly. L-carnitine plays a role in the mitochondria with bringing fats into the cell to use for energy. We just spent like 5-10 minutes talking about how that is crucial for amplifying the ability for your mitochondria to make water and heat, right? That's why we want to go with fatty steaks and stuff like that while we're at the events. Well, L-carnitine is going to amplify that whole cycle of how quickly you can process those fats. So that's very beneficial, obviously, right there. So those two products right there are going to be crucial for amplifying that performance for sure. Selenk is it's a nootropic, but it's a very specific nootropic in that it acts as an antioxidant in the brain first, which means that you're not going to go into, say, you showed up at the Tony Robbins event or whatever event you're trying to perform cognitively at, and you have a lot of background crap going on. Hey, this bill or this person that I fired, or I need to talk to that person, or what. You have a lot of stuff that's not even related to whatever you're going to be doing, right? Bringing down the antioxidant means that now you're by default relieving ROS, reactive oxygen species, before the event starts. Okay. That means that whatever precedes that, whatever comes next, is now going to stand out in your brain, in your memory forming, and all of that stuff even more. So now you're going to be able to solidify the learning process of whatever came next. It's very important to understand whatever came next, right? So even the things you don't want to learn, or if you get involved in something that you don't necessarily want to be a part of, you're going to learn that, right? So be cognizant of what you're doing, be dedicated. In a Tony Robbins events, you don't have a choice, right? It's like you're going to be learning what you're there to learn, right? So it's taken care of for you. The reason why I'm saying this is because if you start using Selenk on your own at other parts in your life, but say you take it and you were going to do some cognitive tasks and whatever, and then you ended up having a fight with somebody. Well, guess what? That fight is now part of the learning process, right? So you got to be careful. Okay, you got to be careful on how you take that, but it is something that you can clearly use to amplify the learning process.
Is it something that can be added in from natural sources at all?
I don't think so. No. I'm 100% sure it's not, because it is a Russian-made drug.
Yeah, so Russians are really big on performance.
yeah. So yeah, no, you cannot get it naturally. This is a complete pharmaceutical. Now Daryl Strength also carries this also product where it's a combination of L-carnitine, choline, and Selenk together for this very specific purpose of amplifying mental and cognitive performance for the task at hand. But again, you have to be responsible enough to use it correctly.
Yeah, and you probably need someone to guide you properly how to use it and so you don't
Yeah,
run
yeah, because
completely.
there's some preparatory stuff to go on, right? Hey, just like we said, hey, there's some preparatory stuff before you go to a Tony Robbins event that will make that event better or worse,
Yeah,
right? The water is a prime example, right? If you're not doing that right, well, don't try to do it while you're at the event. It's actually going to hinder your performance.
yeah,
Um,
because you will be running to toilet every 2 minutes.
yes,
So
yes.
you go throughout the day, you have supplemented yourself, you have eaten very well, all those kind of things. By end of day 3, 4, you are still so depleted, you're feeling you're gonna crash down with the flu, which happens with a lot of people. What would be the best strategies to recover after these type of events?
In that very specific, that's where I would go with the forced recovery. That is a prime time to be like, hey, the moment this is over, forced recovery day. Have it planned, have it part of the event, right?
So
Because that's
video
what
number 8 on this series
yeah,
is
yeah,
definitely
that's a
gonna provide
perfect
that.
place to plug that in where it's like, hey, I've done this for 4 days. It's been extreme, just like you said, 18-hour days of just constant go and constant amplification of the learning processes. You're drained, right? So the forced recovery is perfect to end there, right? Even if it's not there, you travel, you fly back to wherever you're going to go. That's perfect because the travel was part of the stress, right?
Mm.
You land, you have a forced recovery day, right? Um, Now, if things are dialed back, right, you're doing this on your own with a coach or whatever, for your normal work weeks, you're just being a high performer. That's where video number 9 comes into play. Start doing that more frequently and more on point, and you're not going to run into a forced recovery event, but you are going to get all the benefits of the things we talked about here and the recovery benefits of doing all the things in video number 9 correctly, very consistently, and you can run that for months on end. So it depends on the doses. The dose is the thing, right? Like your exact situation is what's going to tell you: do we go with forced recovery or do we just stick to the basics of making sure that these are on point every single day?
And this is something that we touched up earlier as well, is that you're probably not gonna try to get your physiology or aesthetics improved whilst you're there. Focus on your cognitive experience, focus on doing all those things. This is why when I'm there, for example, I rarely go to gym. If I do, I will do light all body workout for like half an hour, 45 minutes at tops. And then when you come back home, you have fully recovered, you have fully re-immersed and kind of refreshed what you have just learned. This is when you have your periodization laid out specifically, that now you are getting back into gym and looking after your physical health, not just cognitive performance and
Yes.
acquiring new skills that you were there to acquire.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Don't try to mix and match.
Yeah, and this is something that oftentimes I see a lot of people will misunderstand, that they want to do everything perfect. And this is where having someone who can see your blind spots and tell you, look, you are trying to do two completely different things, and none of them will work because they are just so contradicted.
No, yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to this. I mean, what is life in general? It is the furthest away from equilibrium from an energy perspective as possible. That is what life is. If you're at equilibrium, if you're balanced, guess what? You're dead. That's how it works. Okay. If you are equal, you are dead. Life exists at the far extremes. It's being far this way or far that way. It doesn't exist in the middle. So the best thing that you can learn as a human when it comes to like performance and really just living the life to the fullest is whatever you're doing, do it to the maximum, do it to the extreme, because that's going to be where the reward is. And
Yeah,
then when it's time to do something different, do that to the extreme. Don't try to balance shit. Balancing shit means you got nowhere. You're dead.
yeah. So the key takeaway is uh, maximize whatever the hell you do, but make sure it's not at expense of you trying doing too many things at the same time, because
Right.
you are
Right.
just wasting time. Like many people have learned, go to gym just to get tired
Mm.
because they have so many other things going in their head and thinking about bookkeeping and accounting and this and that they don't even focus on their training anymore. And then 5 years later, why didn't I have any results?
Yeah. Yep.
And same exactly will be happening with this kind of event. You go there and you're focusing about, hey, will I have my meal in 2 hours? You're just missing out the point of the event altogether.
Yeah. Well, right on, man. I think that's our time.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time as usual.